You cannot motivate anybody to do anything they don't want to do. Why? People will tolerate the conclusions of others, but they will only act on their own conclusions. People will tolerate the conclusions of others, but they will only act on their own conclusions. And so here's the challenge, and it took me a very long time to figure this out, so I want to give you the shortcuts here today. Don't sell, create the gap. Don't sell, create the gap. And I'm going to give you two very specific examples of how we do this, and I do this every day in our practice, but I could literally give you 100 different examples. So I'll share with you two very specific ones. Some time ago, actually not that long, about 3 or 4 years ago, we were asked to engage with a big technology company. And I had worked with the CEO in his previous role, so he knew our playbook and he was coming very specifically for that content. And he said to me, look, Peter, he'd been in the role a couple of months, he said, we've got very clear ambitions and aspirations. The executive team are all aligned on them, so what I don't want to do is go through the 3-month diagnostic process that we had done previously and that we would typically do. Don't want to go through all that. I'm very confident we have clear aspirations. I want to get to the work. I want to start working on the strategy and the structure and the leadership and all that good stuff. And remember my mantra, don't sell, create the gap. I expect there's a problem with this, and I'm very concerned about starting the work before we have a precise diagnosis of the problem. We don't go into a doctor and say, I have a pain in my side, would you please remove my appendix? Right? We do some tests first and we make sure we pinpoint. And so I said to him, look, absolutely we can get to it quickly, but just indulge me, and I won't even charge you for it. Let's just take a quick check at the executive team and the next level to just make sure everybody's really clear around the aspirations, just before we start running. It only takes a couple of days. We'll just be certain. So your executive, which is 10 people, and then the next 100 people who report into that group. And bear in mind that people at the next level, some of them are running businesses of more than $1 billion. So these are very significant, high-stakes things. And so we use this simple model. This is one of about 100 that we've developed over the years to help create the gap, so I don't have to sell. And it's called the 7C test. Okay, it's one of our proprietary models. And basically, we're asking the group of senior leaders, how clear are we on these aspirations? How compelling are they? Do we have the capability and the capacity to get there? Are we confident? Can we all see our contribution? And ultimately, are we all committed? Very simple, 0 to 100 scale. So the executive team filled this in, and this is what it looked like. Exactly like the CEO said. We're very clear, we think they're very compelling, we're all very committed, we're mildly confident, we're very worried about our capability and capacity. We've got big gaps in our structure and our systems and all that. We want to get to that work. Great. Now, do you think the next level might have had a slightly different picture? We've got enormous capability, we've got enormous capacity, we're mildly confident. We don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. What does that aspiration even mean? Now, again, the lesson here is I could have tried to sell him on this forever. But I have learned that is like banging your head on a brick wall. And I already told you I'm getting a bit old and lazy now. Don't sell, create the gap. We're at the Human Synergistics Conference. This is a circumplex, but it's not the instrument that Rob just showed you. Rob showed you what's called the OCI, which is the Organisational Culture Inventory. This is the Leadership Impact circumplex. And Leadership Impact basically asks 2 questions. Ideally, how would you like to motivate and encourage those you lead to behave? So it's asking you, what is your leadership vision? You are setting an aspiration. And then the 360 surveys go out and you get feedback from others and they tell you how you are actually motivating and encouraging them to behave. Make sense? So same picture, but it's measuring something different. Let me tell you just why I love this tool. Okay, and I said to you before, we use 100 different instruments. This is the only third-party tool that we still use today, 20 years on, and that's simply because we can't create anything better than this. In my opinion, this is the best leadership instrument in the world. My opinion. And there are a few reasons why I like it in particular. Number one, it speaks the language of leaders. Effectiveness, impact, strategies. These are words that leaders, senior leaders, where we work, they understand. The second thing is, it has an enormous amount of substance and depth and complexity. But it also embodies the simplicity that's required for action. It's a 100-something page report, and if you're the type of person that likes that kind of detail, fantastic. But at the end of it all, there's only 2 or 3 pages that you really need to focus on if you want to make a shift. But here's why I love it more than any other reason. It asks the leader to set their own vision for their leadership. Don't sell, create the gap. So here's what happens when they fill in a leadership impact survey. Almost always, it looks like that. They have a very blue picture. Why? Well, let's go to Common Sense Corner for a minute. Right? Most leaders want to encourage others to set and achieve worthy goals. What an idea. They want to encourage and motivate people to bring their whole self to work and think and act in creative and innovative ways to solve real problems. They want to encourage people to develop themselves and develop others, and they want to encourage people to work collaboratively as a team. What an idea. All this does is codify that with rigor and validity and all the rest of it, right? So here's what happens. They get that ideal picture back, right? But the first thing they look at is their actual impact, and that might look a bit more like this. And now their first instinct, because right now they're suffering post-traumatic rationalization, is to say, you know what, Peter? I think 85th percentile power is a really good thing because we're in a tough industry and we've got to kick ass and take names. So what do? I let them get it all out because I've heard it all before. I've probably perfected some of those strategies myself. Get it all out, and then I say, let's just go 2 pages further on. Where is that in your ideal? And it's not there. And so now I'm saying to them, as adults, adult to adult, there is clearly a gap between your noble intentions and how you are currently motivating and encouraging people to behave. The only question today is, are you interested in doing something about the gap? If you're not, that's okay. There's nothing I can do to make you change. If you are interested, I can give you some very specific strategies. The tool itself has a bundle. I'm giving you a dozen today. There's 100 more. Smart people figure it out very quickly. Is this making sense? So what you're actually looking at here is the data from my doctoral research on a bunch of CEOs who transformed, statistically speaking, their own leadership, the leadership of their teams, and the performance of their companies on all the metrics that people care about: financials, customer, employee commitment, all that good stuff, product excellence, and so on. So that was the collective ideal of those CEOs when they started the journey. This was their actual impact, which if you were to see the norms, it's worse than average. And this was their impact at the final measure, which qualified them for the study. Okay? And the only difference between the one in the middle and the one at the end was they selected in. They wanted to bridge the gap. The strategies are not the difficult part. I'll share with you a little trick, guys, a little side tactic here. If you think about change at a simple level as awareness, acceptance, action, right? Any continuum of change, awareness, acceptance, action. Most people say that action is really, really, really difficult. Action is actually dead simple. What takes a long time is to get from awareness to acceptance, to really internalize it. Because what most people do is they say they've accepted it, they start trying to take action, and then they backslide because they haven't internalized it. Acceptance to action is a very short journey. If you find people stuck in change and transformation, they're stuck between awareness and acceptance 9 times out of 10 in my experience. Okay? The key strategy here is don't sell, create the gap. Clear? Don't sell, create the gap. Okay.